Welcome to Shop Talk Live, episode number 285. Vic Tesla, Larissa Huff, the Dream Team, back together again. In this episode, we've got a controversial topic that we start right off with, AI in furniture design, and what it means for furniture designers and makers, and we'll see. We've got some different perspectives for you. And also, we talk about the shoot for Larissa's newest article in issue 302, which should have been in your mailboxes a week ago, maybe. And if it isn't, it's probably because you're not subscribed to Fine Woodworking Magazine or an unlimited member to finewoodworking.com. And I hear it all the time, people who subscribe and or become members to help support the podcast. And truly, it is appreciated. We thank you for that. It's a great way of helping us do what we do here on the podcast. So thank you. If you are looking to hone your skills behind a dovetail saw, it's your very last chance to get in on this cohort of Dovetail Bootcamp with Bob Van Dyke, who podcast listeners know well. All of the tricks and all of the information you're going to need to really take your dovetails to the next level, or if you've been hesitant about learning how to cut dovetails, he's going to get you there, I promise. Head on over to finewoodworking.com/elearning to sign up for Dovetail Bootcamp with Bob Van Dyke, or if you're looking to learn some SketchUp with Dave Richards. Can't miss either. All right, let's get started with the show. I don't think Vic can hold it together any longer.
I was texting him this morning and I was like, I have opinions.
I watched that video you sent a link to and now I feel angry.
And now I'm angry at you.
I hold you responsible. So we're going to dive right in. This is going to be like maybe three podcasts in a row that we dive right into the into the questions. This question is from Joe, who's a frequent contributor to the Fine Woodworking forums. Dear Noble Shop Talk Live panel and Vic, this may come as a shock to you. I watch a lot of YouTube videos about woodworking. Rather recently, on the Make Something YouTube channel, the host used artificial intelligence to design something that he then went on to build. While I enjoy the design process, I think it might be fun to use AI to design something as well as use AI's iterative power to refine and hone things. This YouTube video and the internet in general seems a bit light on using AI to design furniture. Have any of you played with AI in woodworking design? Do you have any suggestions on where to go, what resources to use, what website programs, etc. would make this possible? Does this sound like a topic worth exploring in fine woodworking? We'll do it on the podcast. I don't know about the magazine, but so Vic, you're mad.
Yeah. I want to hear why you're mad.
I don't get it. If I'm being honest, I don't get it. I mean, one of the things that I really, and maybe this is just me, although I feel like it's probably not. I really enjoy the design process. I want to be a part of that process as much as possible. And so when I watched this video, it was basically like Pinterest, where basically you type in, toilet paper holder, and then add the word wood, and then add the word, because basically what this guy had done, and then he added Sam Malouf, and then
that's where it got interesting.
So everything all of a sudden became very flowy, but it basically did the design work. And some of them were like really awful looking, but then some of them were okay. And I don't know, I don't claim to understand. I know how this works. Quite frankly, I don't care how it works because it's not for me. I like to look at the design of furniture as like a problem to solve. And so I want to work through the designs, and I want to work through the things that I like about furniture and what I like to see in furniture. And so it just seemed like it was it just felt a little like icky, if I could use a technical term like that.
Yeah.
It just felt
works.
a little gross to me. If I'm being honest, I didn't like it. I didn't like, and maybe it's because it's like a little bit too like advanced, like soon the machines are going to be programming the machines and, that whole utopian thing. But I don't know. I feel like it's not at all how I would design a piece. I don't see the advantage of it. Until the day that I become so prolific that instead of typing Sam Malouf, you type Vic Teslin. I feel like it's not going to be of any good to me.
So okay, to catch up I should have talked about the video a little bit. It's David Picciuto's Make Something. He sets out to make a towel holder for like a benchtop towel holder, a countertop
paper. What did I say? Toilet paper.
You said
holder?
Toilet paper holder. Yeah,
that's not what it was for.
A countertop towel holder, like a hand towel. Types in those phrases, gets a bunch of designs, and then, interestingly enough, he builds it fairly as is, like as the AI generated it, which is where I think it became super interesting and super, like, I looked at it as more of an exercise. Mm-hmm. Like, I don't think David is gonna set out to create all of his pieces generated from AI designs or something like that. But I don't know. All right, Larissa, you're pretty design heavy.
I am. And the AI thing has been like a big player in my household because my husband uses it a lot and is very into it.
Does he?
Yes. So although AI is like hugely controversial right now, and I understand that this whole conversation is like people are going to have strong opinions about it. But my understanding based on what my husband does with it is that he has his own ideas and he trains the AI to produce an image of what he has in his own brain or something as close to it as possible. So using words, and you can like import images, you can like train it to respond certain ways to certain things. So it could eventually put like Vic pieces in front of people or like things inspired by your work if you input that information. So I guess my take on it would be something like if I'm designing a desk, what I'll normally do is pull books and magazines and like pull from different influences that I like. And maybe AI could be used to do like a mood board, for lack of better words, where you can kind of like piecemeal different ideas and different components together and see like what it spits out, and it might influence a design I make. I don't think I would like copy a design unless it was for exercise purposes. But I don't think AI is going anywhere realistically the same way that...
Oh, no, it's a fad, just like the internet. Yeah.
Just like the internet.
Yeah. So I think like, I don't know how furniture makers are going to find a way to use it. We probably don't even know yet like what's possible, but because it's not going anywhere, I'm inclined to like watch these videos and say, all right, what can we take away from this? Like what was helpful, what was not? But I also live with a person who uses it as a tool. So I think my take is a little bit different.
So you, Vic, you had mentioned Pinterest, and like, I don't know if it's that different than typing things, because that is a really good analog of like just typing things into Pinterest and seeing what you get, and then like clicking pin or whatever and put them in a board. The interesting thing to me though was how far he took it, where it was like, okay, this AI model has like this weird swoop here that made no sense whatsoever. And it was like, this is making your life very difficult, dude. And I don't even think it's adding that much to the aesthetic, but I admire that he was like, nope, I'm all in. I'm making this thing. So the interesting thing to me was that he was doing it 100%. And I think that might have made it a little bit more difficult to wrap your head around as using it as an inspiration tool, like you were saying, Larissa.
Well, I'm thankful for Larissa's take on it, because it was the part where he basically scrolled through all the designs like as if he was on Tinder, and then picked the one he wanted and then made it like almost true to form. That's when I started feeling gross about
And
it.
I get that. I get that. Yeah.
Yeah. But Larissa, you bring up a really good point that what?
I was gonna say I met my husband on Tinder, so also
I mean, this is a modern family. This is.
I met Ben on Tinder. It's no big deal. But yeah, no, that's I think the fact that the way you sort of used it as or suggested that you could use it as a tool, right, to sort of put together a mood board or a design board or whatever, to be able to say, like, I like this aspect, I like that aspect. And then I'll sometimes do that with furniture that I find inspiring, where like I'll bring it into my iPad and make it a layer in Procreate, and then I'll riff off of it, right? And try to like, okay, I like this, but I really don't like that. I don't like that. And, even things like IKEA furniture, built horribly in a lot of cases, but sometimes the designs are pretty solid.
Oh yeah.
Agreed.
But but in order to make it nice, I feel like I have to like break out of the, 18 millimeter plywood and the, all the like standards of, furniture, mass production, and try to make it a little bit nicer and, play with the weights and things like that. But yeah, no, that's interesting. That makes me feel a little bit better about AI in the sense that you can use it as a tool. But I think like if you go into it soup to nuts and like start by typing in some keywords and finish by replicating something that, was all, because I don't think we're far from do what he did. And then when it came time to build, taking that and converting it into like something a CNC can do, and then CNC it all out, and then now you've got this thing.
I mean, I think people will do that.
Absolutely. That is honestly not that far of an extension. You could. Well, I'm sure your husband would load it into Blender, and then. Oh, yeah. You guys have the fixins to like really wander down this road.
Yeah. I think that, it's interesting. I think there'll be a whole AI furniture. I think there'll be companies that make AI furniture. Like they'll do what that guy in the video did and then produce the thing and sell it. And I think there'll be a market for that. And it won't be the same market as like fine furniture making. It will be like a whole different thing we've never seen before.
But will it just be a novelty? Do you think, like, will the interesting aspect of it be that it was done through AI? I don't see that competing with what we do, y'all do, I don't see that as moving in on the marketplace of real furniture makers. I would really like to see someone do a video doing the whole riff where it's like, okay, the AI generated this. That's kind of silly. I'm not going to do this. That's bad construction. I'm not going to do this. And because it's like, seriously, some of it was, I was really surprised at how solidly he was able to make the construction of it. Because there were some things where like, anybody trained in any furniture construction whatsoever is not going to be doing this. But then there's a part of that makes it super interesting.
I was going to say, like, the Wharton Eschrick of it all is like, he didn't know the rules. He didn't know the woodworking rules or the architect rules. So he came up with ideas and found people and made it happen. And I think there's something in the AI universe that does the same. Like the computer doesn't understand joinery and doesn't understand like wood movement. So it's interesting that it will come up with ideas that your brain never could because you're restricted by what you know about the material. So it could influence designs in that way. I don't know.
It's the same thing as Emile Jacques Ruhlmann. He was the same. Like, he wasn't a furniture maker, he was a designer, and he would come up with wacky things. And if a woodworker said, oh, well, this can't be done, then he would just fire them because he was a bit of a jerk, I guess. But like, yeah, it's like you're right. You get these ideas that just don't make sense because you couldn't. But then is that one of those situations where it spits out something ridiculous, but then you look at it and go, but if I did that, right? I don't know. Maybe I'm warming up to this a little bit.
I think having a healthy fear is good. It's new, you know.
I don't like it.
Do you see yourself doing this at all, Larissa? Like, next piece, just experimenting?
Oh man, my husband would be thrilled if I came home and I was like, teach me how to do AI. I don't know. It's possible. I mean, I look over his shoulder and see him like honing these images, and it's very interesting. But I know there's controversy about whether like it's stealing the designs and ideas of other people because it's generating these things from internet images and information, which are things that other people made. So I'm not sure.
Okay, so it's feeding from reality. Yeah, because when he typed in Sam Maloof, it got more Maloof.
Right.
But that's inspiration. Yeah, where is
But like the whole internet is that. Like you can search Sam Maloof and you can build a Sam Maloof chair. So I'm not sure.
Well,
I'm
pretty sure that there's people out there who have built Maloof style rockers and might not know who Sam Maloof is at this point. You know,
that's probably true. Yeah.
Because, you know, the same way Greg Klassen with the river table, you know, most river tables have no idea who Greg Klassen is, you know, and he was kind of as far as I know, one of the people who really got that ball rolling. Yeah. So that's kind of sad that there's going to be inspiration coming from places and people won't know where it is anymore. So.
Yeah, I agree. I don't know. I don't see myself reaching for it anytime soon, but the fact that I know it's not going away means eventually I'm going to have to be like, all right, let's see what this can do. But as a woodworker, we're all reluctant. We'll drag our feet we'll be like 5 years behind everybody else and maybe start to explore it down the line. I'm not sure.
That's a really solid attitude about it, though. Where it's like, the reality is, I know this is here. So, yeah.
So when your husband develops a course, AI for furniture makers, sign me up. I'll come and take it.
All right. He has a Blender class on the internet, so you can like render your stuff in Blender.
Okay. I still don't understand Blender. You were talking about last time, and you're like, no, I don't want any part of it. Or
I don't like the sound it makes when you put ice cubes in it.
Very loud, jarring. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So let's go to this question. This is like the opposite end of the spectrum, and I think just as important. This one's from Joe. Preparing to make new cabinets for the home my father built in 1962. I'm an engineer, and my father was a carpenter, as his father before him. Restated, I can be picky and passionately detest iron-on edging. Seeking the most robust and aesthetic plywood edge finishing that can be done with minimal time and materials. I warn you, I am picky. I will probably go with birch veneer plywood. Thought about walnut, but it is a north-facing room that could get too dark. Any ideas? So, edging plywood. Who wants to go? Come on, Larissa. How are you edging plywood?
I mean, full disclosure, I don't use plywood all that much, but I've used the iron-on stuff with success, but since that's out, I know that there's like that V-groove style where you can cut like a V-groove along the edge and then make a triangle that fits so that you don't see the hardwood meeting the plywood. So if I had to do it and I knew like you were going to see all faces at the same time, I would probably go for that. If it was going to be more hidden, like a shelf or something, I might just do like tongue and groove, solid wood, tack an inch on the end or whatever that matches. So I guess it would depend on the application.
Yeah, I think I've tried those router bits before that are designed. They make like some of them are a V groove, some of them are like a shallow dish, and the idea is that you can put on the band and then you can either leave it proud or you can flush it right up so that it's just meeting where the plywood starts. Those bits are really finicky. Like you got to get the height just right, and then
because if it's not in the middle,
yeah,
it's not going to flush. Oh,
yeah.
My thought, could you tilt the table saw blade and then rip it from both faces so that way it would be in the middle?
Oh,
maybe, but the problem is plywood is not flat, and
True.
so like you'll get like, because I tried one of these bits one time, and it was awful because the plywood, unless you're putting it through a power feeder that is going to keep it pressed in the same location and go through at the same time, the bit kind of like it can kind of come up and down a little bit on the plywood, and then now your reveal is completely messed up. And so I thought, well, I mean, the only time I ever do plywood is if I'm veneering. And when I'm veneering, I'm putting on like 1/8 of an inch banding on the bare plywood, flushing it up, and then veneering over top of it.
Mm-hmm.
So it doesn't matter to me. I don't know. I don't know that there's a solution, because otherwise you're just basically scabbing a piece on, and, you're going to see that, especially like with birch, it's not too bad because like birch doesn't have like grain really, but like you're going to see the grain going this way and then the banding like onto it. So I don't know. You could try that, you could try that thing, or you could just be fine with maybe a little thicker veneer, like maybe like a 1/16 of an inch shop sawn something or other. Maybe that would make you feel better because it's thicker than the iron on. But yeah, I don't know. All I know is that those bits are a nightmare to work with. So.
Yeah, I think I saw the table saw technique in a fine woodworking article, not to plug, but I'm pretty sure Mario Rodriguez wrote an article about it that I've like bookmarked it for this purpose.
Look at Ben frantically finding some way to make a note.
Mario Rodriguez, plywood edging. Show notes, people.
Yeah, for sure.
So first off, he's one of my favorites. And he's a really good resource to take this information from, because he's done everything. I mean, talk about somebody who does fine furniture, Windsor chairs, and then built-ins and mantelpieces. I mean, the guy's experience is out of this world. So we will definitely link to that. I'm going to be the one, though, that comes in and says, iron-on edge banding is fine. I love this stuff. I love it. It's great.
There's nothing
it is a
wrong with
fantastic
it.
product.
No, I agree.
And like, if Joe, if you can find a way of getting yourself over it, because there is something that says, you said with minimal time and materials, it's like you are asking for a very specific answer, and it happens to be in aisle 32 next to the plywood. I mean, it is minimal time and effort. And if done patiently, slowly, good amount of heat, it's on there and trimmed nicely. I've got tons of pieces that the other day I was looking at a piece in my son's room and it was like, oh yeah, that's iron-on edge banding. And it's not because I noticed it. I just happened to wonder like, oh, how did I make that panel so big? And it was, oh yeah, it's a piece of plywood with edge banding. So I don't know, Joe. I think I'd try
The
and
only
suck
other
it up.
solution
Pick
is
your
to
battles.
not do frameless.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
the other solution, is to put face frames on and then don't worry about it.
Yeah.
That's a really good point. Have you done many built-ins, Larissa?
Not many. I'm currently helping a friend do like a huge built-in closet situation, and that's the most intense I've ever done. So it's proving to be a learning experience.
What's been the most surprising element of something like that?
I just like, because it's like floor to ceiling, there's been a lot of like, in what order do we do things? Because once it's in there, you can't really get to like certain components. So there's a lot of, I don't know, process thoughts that I have not thought of when I build like furniture that stands on the floor. It's a thing I think of less.
Yeah. You just got to get it in the room. That's it.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, so I think let's go ahead and can we hit segments? Does somebody have an all-time favorite tool or technique or a smooth move? I can get going. I have.
Go for it.
All right.
Yeah.
I haven't done much woodworking the past week or so. So I struggled, and then on my bench, I saw a pile of. I have my little pile of like clamping call thingies that just go in a little box. And I was like, oh yeah, that is something that just constantly comes in handy. And I have, in my hand, I'm holding little, like a 1 inch by 3 inch piece of yoga mat that I got for like $5 at some thrift store or something like that.
You paid $5 for a 3-inch piece of yoga mat?
The whole yoga
mat. You really
mat.
Can get everything.
The
in
whole
America,
yoga mat. It is the gift that keeps on giving. I mean, I have pieces of this thing all over my shop, but like you're clamping something up and you don't want to mar it. Just wrap the yoga mat in it, and you can put it in your vise, and you're fine. The other thing that I use for clamping all the time is I got this idea from Dave Fisher. And this is, if you go to like your Tractor Supply, agricultural supply store, it is belting, like rubber belting for farm stuff. But it comes in like 7-inch wide strips. I think this was 7-inch by 36 inches long or something like that. So you piece it together to make big farm implement belts. And this stuff is grippy as all get out and will never, it's just solid rubber, and it's got a woven interior, so it's difficult to cut and everything, but it's so grippy. If you need something for hold fast clamp, to put on your hold fast, to keep things from moving under hold fast or in vice jaws or whatever. And the last but not least is small cutoffs of plexiglass, 1/4-inch plexiglass. That if you're gluing something up and you need to see the joint while you're doing it, you can get the pressure wherever you need it and still be able to see what's going on under the plexiglass. So clamping widgets, everybody needs a pile.
I have an old, so when my daughter was like young, she made, you've probably seen these 100 times where somebody takes an LP and they put it in the oven and then they press it into the,
it's always the worst record too. It's always like the worst B-side because nobody wants to do it with rumors.
Mine was Frank Sinatra, which was a little disappointing.
Oh.
Yeah. So I gave, like, once she was old enough to understand, I chastised her about it. But anyway, so in that, I have a big collection of those sorts of things, but I'd never heard of the belting. What's the, like, is it a leather belt?
It's rubber.
Rubber.
Yeah. And Dave Fisher uses these, like his bull horse is lined in this stuff and it doesn't leave marks. The only time that there is a little bit of a texture to it, there's a little tooth to it. And the only time it leaves marks that I have found, and this is, a very me problem, is on soft spruce. If I use it as a clamping call on spruce ukulele top, it will leave behind that impression. But it's super grippy. It was, I want to say $30. I didn't want to buy it. It was $30 for the roll. It seemed like a lot, but it was one of those, Dave says, do it. I'm doing it. And, I have a lifetime supply. If I find my roll, I'll send you each some.
Oh,
great.
If I find it. I have no idea where it is right now, though. But
the other thing that's good at Tractor Supply places or agricultural places is horse mats to put on your floor in your shop if you've got like concrete or whatever. Now, everybody who I haven't gone, and there's one just up the road. I just need to like take the time and go and take a visit, but they're pretty large because horses are fairly big.
I don't know if you've seen them, but horses are.
Yeah. I don't know how many horses you guys got down there in the U.S., but we got a few up here.
Canadian horses are bigger than dogs.
Yeah, that's right. They're huge. Yeah, it's because of all of the maple syrup. They have diabetes as well, but anyway, so apparently they're really good, and they don't compress very easily, which is like you want for a foam mat or for a mat on the floor, you want something that's going to stay fairly rigid. And because a horse, when you think about how much weight is coming down on a hoof, that's quite a bit. So anyway, I got to check that out too. So maybe next time I'll go and I'll check that out, and I'll check out the strapping for what you don't know what it's for. Like
it's belting. It's like
belting.
Yeah. I'll look it up while one of you all is talking.
Sounds like a 1970s disciplinary device.
I need to add so that nobody Instagram DMs me.
Slides into your DMs.
Which is the new bane of my existence. But Vic, when you get a floor mat, the 4x6 stall mat or whatever they are, because we had talked about it on the show one time, and I think Barry and I were saying, yeah, we'd get them, but they're really heavy and hard to carry. And I got so many emails that are like, you're an idiot. And apparently you just bring some C-clamps and you strap a C-clamp on the mat, and then the mat is sturdy enough to clamp to, and you can just use the C-clamp as a handle. And apparently everyone in the world knows this but me. So
I didn't know that.
Well, now you know.
Did not know
and
that.
Now our listeners,
well, yeah. So guess what? Our DMs are going to be full of you're an idiot.
Larissa, do you have anything? Or Baylor belting. Baylor belting.
Baylor.
4-inch by 60 inches, $26.
American.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's like, what's that metric?
78.
It's like 20 Celsius. All right. Larissa, sorry I interrupted you.
No, that's quite all right. I was thinking about this last night, our shop is still, as soon as the machine started working, we just stopped doing anything else. So it's still in complete disarray, and there's no storage, and there's no outfeed tables, and there's no assembly tables. And we'll get there. But as a result, I don't have a tool cabinet yet. So all of my tools are just in like a rolling toolbox. So what that means is it just ends up on my bench for days, because if I put them all away, then I can't re-find them. And I was trying to think of the things that haven't been put back in the toolbox as much, that I'm using constantly. Yeah. And I have found myself using my doweling plate a lot recently, because I also don't have a lot of materials yet. I've done one lumber run since we moved in. I don't have a lot of I don't have long lengths of dowel. I don't have scraps of plywood. I don't have things around that I would normally grab. So I'm inventing other ways to do it. And I rediscovered my doweling plate and just sat there and punched a bunch of dowels the other day in various diameters. And I was like, this is a tool that just sits in my toolbox all the time. And I don't really think about that much, because I usually just buy a 3-foot length of it. But man, they are effective.
Yeah. And satisfying.
Yes.
It's yeah. It's kind of like a superhuman
ode to my
trick.
doweling plate. Yeah.
I dig
That's
it.
cool. I saw somebody on the internet use a dowel plate, but they chucked the wood into the drill. And I had never done that before. I always just mashed it through with the biggest hammer I had. But I've never seen it with the drill, and it seemed to work fairly
through
well.
a dowel plate? Like,
Yeah, I've done that. It works if the grain is straight. If it's not, then it like the pressure of pushing and spinning like breaks the stock if it's too thin. But it does work. It does work.
So I wonder if you're doing riven pegs, then maybe that's the best situation, is to spin them through there, because technically if they're riven, there should be, perfectly straight grain. So, I'll try that out. Who makes your plate?
It's a great question. And I don't know, because it was a thing that we got a call from a woman whose husband died, and she was getting rid of all the tools, and it was just like in a box of a bunch of tiny like drill bits and various things. So I don't know. It doesn't have like a maker name on it, so I don't know.
Because I one time needed a dowel plate and didn't have a dowel plate, but I had an old dead file, so I just drew the temper out of it and then drilled a hole through it and then started mashing stock through it, and it worked, fairly well. Although I remember when I worked at Veritas, they came up with a set, and like they were relieved on the underside, so it reduces the friction. And I thought, well, that would be handy, because when you're pounding wood through like, almost a 1/4 inch of steel, like they get jammed in there pretty good. So, but yeah, no, that's cool. Dowel plate.
Vic, do you have a favorite tool or something?
Well, I'm starting to get one. So I typically have gone on record as having a hate-on for mechanical pencils. They break too fast or too easily in the shop, I find. If you drop them, all the little leads, like they get broken, and it turns in, then you're just, you're doing this for 20 minutes trying to get like a piece that's going to work. And so I've always been a big fan of pencils, but of course the downfall to regular pencils is you either keep them sharp or the line gets thicker and thicker as you go, which is fine for, soft pencils that I use to put like markings on boards or whatever to identify them. But when you're trying to do like joinery lines or whatever, you want them as precise as possible. So anyway, I found a 0.9 millimeter pencil. And it's like the Pica brand pencils. And I guess they just came up with this, because they always had the big one, whatever that one is, 1.5 millimeter or something, like the big thick one that you have to sharpen.
Is Pica the one with, it's like the long thin nose or whatever?
Yeah.
You can buy them at woodworking supply stores or whatever.
Yep.
Okay. All right. Yeah.
And they do markers, and they do lumber crayon and all that other kind of stuff. Anyway, so I saw that they had this 0.9 millimeter, and I thought, well, let's give this a try. But I was skeptical, because my thought was, well, my God, if the line is a millimeter thick, pretty much, I mean, that's going to be a really thick line. But it doesn't actually work out that way. It actually does give you a fairly decent line that doesn't change diameters on you. And so I was pleasantly surprised by it. And so it's been kind of my go-to shop pencil lately. And so, so I have to go back on my previous statement that mechanical pencils are tools of the devil. And now, some mechanical pencils are okay.
It turns out there's some gray area between.
Yeah. Who knew?
Between pure evil and
right,
and a usable writing utensil.
Well, that's right. Yeah, so it turns out you can't throw the baby out with the bathwater.
Hey, I'm Joshua Klein.
And I'm Mike Updegraff.
And we're from Mortise and Tenon magazine, all about hand tool woodworking.
We put out 2 issues per year and always ad-free. It's more like a hefty journal.
And we publish our own books and courses and even the Mortise and Tenon podcast.
We're all about hand tool craftsmanship for the 21st century.
If this is up your alley, you should check out our website at mortiseandtenonmag.com.
So, Larissa, you have the article in the new issue of 302. What shop are you in?
Oh.
And how many tape measures are in that shop?
A lot. So that article was shot while I was in between shops.
Okay.
And my previous shop was in the basement, didn't have windows, and there were 6 other people who worked there, so I couldn't like reserve it for a photo shoot for an extended period of time. So the shop I'm in is the friend who I'm helping build out the closet. It's in his garage. He is a former engineer as well and has every measuring tool known to man. And all of the tape measures are checked regularly to make sure that they're still accurate and that the end hasn't like thrown off the accuracy of how they measure. It's a very thorough shop space. So that is the shop I'm in.
That's cool.
The backdrop of all of the shots, this is a very meticulous person. I kept being like,
yes.
It doesn't look like Larissa's shot. Not that you're not meticulous, but I just can't see your space being that.
Yes, no.
Yeah, okay.
No. It is a friend, my friend Owens, and yeah, it's a beautiful space. But I saw Barry recently. He like stopped by me in Eric's shop and gave me a box of tools that he didn't need or was gonna get rid of. And while he was, one of the things in there was like a Bessie clamp, and I was like, "Oh, my first clamp!" And he was like, "Wait, what?" And I was like, "Yeah, I don't have any clamps. In all of my shared shops, it's always like at Lore we had a set, and then my second one, everybody else came with clamps. So Barry gave me my first clamp.
Wow.
I wish I know.
You never forget your first clamp.
I know.
We just gave away a whole bunch of clamps. Oh, Larissa. I'm so sorry.
No, it's okay. It's all right.
All right. Well, thank you. So I was able to drop the new issue into the podcast. See, this is marketing.
Yes.
Cross promotion.
Synergy.
This next question's from Greg. What are the regular maintenance activities that you perform on your machines, or that you should perform, but neglect because who has time for that business? I know this is a big question with no simple answers, but I'd be curious to get a sense of how you folks care for your machines in your shop. So, Larissa.
I liked this question because I liked that they immediately addressed that we often are like, I don't have time for this right now. I guess mostly like I wax the surfaces a lot because I get really mad if they get sticky and things don't slide smoothly. I like changing blades when they're dull. I'm not like ignoring the machines when they're making sounds that they shouldn't make, or like they're resisting more than they should. So I guess I tend to things as they occur, but I don't know that I have like a routine maintenance thing that I do. I just like address things as they occur instead of ignoring like, oh, this blade seems dull. I'll just do this last few cuts. Like I'll stop and I'll clean the blade, or I'll switch it out or whatever. But yeah, I don't have like a list of things that I do every month or anything.
Well, one reason why I'm curious is you've always had shop mates.
Yeah.
So how do you decide who's doing what? And do you see there being rock, paper, scissors? do you see there being a schedule needed eventually? Because I know the fine woodworking shop is just me walking around cursing, yelling at my coworkers because it's like, I can't believe they didn't do this. And there's a bandsaw blade right there. Why leave that blade on this? And like, I feel like I need to come up with a schedule and just set the time aside and do it. So you haven't had that problem?
I mean, there's certain situations which certainly could have benefited if we had like organized enough to put a schedule in place. But luckily I've shared shops with people who, generally speaking, also needed blades to be sharp and work well and needed surfaces to like be smooth. So as you address it for your own needs, it ends up benefiting the next person in line. There's very few people I've shared a shop with that just like ignore maintenance, which I guess is luck. At Lore, we were running a school, so we were maintaining the machines like constantly. And then my other shared shops have been with people who are like running their businesses out of there. So their income depends on things working well and not being broken or dull or whatever. So I guess I've lucked out. I don't know if the fine woodworking shop, you guys all just get to play in there, so there's less like obligation to do things.
Well, there's that, and it's like you run in there and do one thing really quick, and you're in the middle of the workday or whatever. It's like,
Sure.
for us, sometimes that one thing is like the same thing as like, oh, I need to do a spreadsheet thing. If that's what spreadsheet people do, how they talk.
Is it?
I got to do this spreadsheet thing real quick.
I'm gonna I gotta do this.
There's a reason people slide into your DMs, Ben. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Whatever you spreadsheet people do. I like spreadsheets because you can make the little boxes different colors.
Yeah.
It's true.
That's why I like a spreadsheet.
You can make it do math.
And that's why we have no reason for them. You know what? Actually, that brings up a listener wrote in and they want you to do, and I agree, they want Larissa to do a blog series, Math for Woodworkers.
Oh, yeah, that would be awesome.
Yeah.
I'm working on a class about it, so I might as well turn the outline of my class into blogs. I'd
We'll
be
pay
happy
you.
to do that.
Yeah.
Okay. Great.
Awesome.
So I have a thought about the maintenance thing.
Oh, yeah, we're talking about woodwork.
Yeah, remember we were talking about that before we went down the road of spreadsheets?
Right.
So in the military, I was taught that there was a saying, never pass a fault. And so the idea is that if you see that something's not right, fix it immediately. Don't let it be someone else's responsibility. And so that I've sort of, after that's been beaten into your head for 14 years, you tend to kind of take solace in it almost. And so I always teach people, whether it's hand tools, power tools, whatever, when you have to do the critical maintenance, which is of course sharpening, right? And Larissa, you talked about like if you have to push harder than you did yesterday, maybe the bandsaw blade needs replacing or whatever. I'm going through the trouble at that point to sharpen or replace a blade. I take the extra 10 minutes or so and just go over the machine quickly. And I check to see that, like, so for example, the bandsaw, I'm going to replace the blade. Well, when you replace the blade, the way I do it, I back off all of the guides and all that other stuff. That's a perfect time to get the vacuum out, clean all that stuff out, clean things around the wheels, make sure that the belt is still in good shape, make sure everything spins well. And then like, I don't go around with a grease gun and start attacking things because I don't think that that's completely necessary. But as soon as you have that opportunity with a hand plane, right? You've got the blade out, take the adjuster out too, and like wipe off all of the crud that gets into the adjusters and put a couple of drops of oil in, put it back in. And, if there's a bit of rust that you've discovered or whatever. So I find instead of having like, okay, once a week do ABC, once a month do ABC, right? I find that if you just, when you're doing your routine maintenance, and this depends on the fact that you're not that woodworker who lets the blades get so bad that the end grain of the cherry board is just a big burn mark, right? That's the time, I think, to kind of just take a quick once over. And I've never had a serious machine failure because I always take a second and make sure everything's good to go. So I think that, and I've also worked in shops, Ben, like you're describing, right? A lot of the shops when I worked at Lee Valley, there was a shop that staff could use to like for either photography or for whatever. Well, the problem is that nobody was responsible for the shop. But everybody used the shop. And Larissa's point about she's working with people who make money off of everything working properly. So it's a different mentality.
Yep.
But I think like for the hobbyists out there, which I think a lot of people are hobbyists, you're not under the same time crunch. And so take 5 or 10 minutes to just go over the tool when you've already got part of it taken apart. Think about like a jointer. You're going to change the knives. Well, now's the time to clean out the jack screws and make sure everything is operating properly and the belt is good and all that other kind of stuff. Like that's the perfect time to do it, I think.
I think the thing that gets overlooked is belts. Mm-hmm. And I know Bob Miller, Mass Woodworks on Instagram. He runs a incredible shop from what I hear, just outside of Boston. And a lot of people work out of there, make their living out of there, and they have machines. And I know every New Year's Day, he calls it Grease Day, but he goes around and greases and inspects every machine. And I think the Grease Day thing is more about like, okay, I have to go grease these bearings on this machine, but this is my opportunity to look at the belt, to look at the bearings, or to listen to the bearings. You know, it's the full inspection. And to me, I guess for you, Greg, like, I think probably if Bob's doing it once a year, if you can't dedicate a whole day to it once a year for your whole shop or something like that, maybe do, you know, Bandsaw January and Planer June, whatever. I don't know. But, you know,
months that start with P. Months that start with P.
But
August.
But, you know, once a year is probably a good enough time to sit there and say, like, okay, let's get the little piece of tube on the end of the shop vac so I can suck up the dust that's on the 45-degree stop on the table saw so that it actually stops at 45 degrees maybe, or the, you know, those things. But any more than once a year, I think you're wasting your time. But I like Bob's mentality of like, I do it every year this day. This is, what are you doing January 1st? I'm doing, it's Grease Day. So this question's from Jesse. Jesse's got a story. And I feel Jesse's pain. I have a 14-inch bandsaw, Euro style 14-inch bandsaw. I went to resaw a 7-inch piece of Shedua, which is fun to say. The board jumped and then had significant drift. I increased the tension, thinking this particular brand of blade needed more tension, tested it again. It did it again. I adjusted all of the guides and tested. On a scrap piece of ash, the board jumped again, but cut straight. And then I tried Shedua again. Jumped, produced drift. I then discovered that the throat plate was about 1/8 of an inch below the table, causing the blade to grab the board at the initial contact, causing the jump. I adjusted that and attempted to resaw again. The drift was so bad, the blade twisted and pulled one of the lower ceramic guide blocks out of the holder. Since the blade was recommended on STL285, I don't believe it's a bad brand. I would assume it's a wood slicer, and I would stand by it as a brand. Could my 1 3/4 horse be underpowered for a 2 to 3 TPI blade? Did the jumping damage cause the blade did the jumping cause, oh my God, dude. Did the jumping damage the blade, causing it not to cut true? Is it possible for the blade to catch the grain in flat sawn wood? Blah, blah. So he's got lots and lots of different ideas. Any help understanding the problem and how to remedy it would be appreciated. So, Vic, what do you think's going on?
So the saw is not underpowered.
No.
There's lots of power on that saw. I've used that saw before. Some of my students have it. Excuse me. The throat plate thing being below, like I was kind of confused by the term jump. I've never had a piece of wood jump at the bandsaw because typically it's the opposite. It's driving it down onto the table. But I can understand that if that throat plate was below, it could, like, it catches and you know, makes it do its thing. Drift is not a thing. And I wish people would stop talking about drift because it's not a thing. Drift
it's a
is just
thing, Vic. It's a thing with dull blades.
It's not a thing
with dull blades.
Drift is a poorly set up bandsaw. That's all drift is.
Yes,
right?
But it's a thing.
I was taught by the master, Michael Fortune, and he's like, forget drift. Drift is a notion that people use when they can't figure out how to set up a bandsaw. So,
wait. I'm sorry. Whoop, I hit my microphone. That's like saying being lost isn't a thing.
Well, no, but they sell these fences that compensate for drift.
I know.
And it's like, no. Don't buy a $300 fence that compensates for something that's like Snuffleupagus. Just
buy a new blade.
Set your blade right, and then it's all gone. Anyway, so the drift thing, I don't really understand what's happening there. So the drift to me is a separate problem outside of the jump thing. So I feel like, Jesse? I feel like Jesse sorted out the jump problem by making sure that the plate was level. The drift thing is a whole other thing, right? And that's just a matter of getting the blade centered on your wheel so that unless you have some serious coplanar problems as far as your top wheel and your bottom wheel being out of whack, which it should be like a Laguna BX is a fairly new saw. I feel like you'd have to have a really big problem if your wheels were out of coplanar enough that they start to cause problems. So, I mean, tension could cause some drifting action, or a lot of time, more often it does like the barrel cut, right? Where if there's not enough tension on the blade. And I just replaced my bandsaw, and it actually has a hydraulic gauge, which is super. So it uses a hydraulic gauge to measure tension instead of a spring, because a spring, of course, as you know, as it gets older, it starts to get weaker and all that other stuff. Well, this is a hydraulic one, and it's like, whoa, this is cool. But there's that guide, there's that easy tension.
Easy tensioner, yeah.
Yeah, so if any of our listeners, if you're listening to this right now, do yourself a favor, go to that website, I think it's easytension.com.
I think it is.
Order,
Tensioner,
Ben will be putting it in the link. Get one of those jigs. I don't care what bandsaw you have. I don't care what your way of doing it. It's not going to be better than this thing. So I think that your saw can handle a 2 to 3 TPI blade, no problem. It should be able to do a full resaw with that blade, lots of horsepower. My guess is tension, and the easy tension will fix that.
Larissa, what's your money on?
It's such a hard one. So recently I was using our new bandsaw, and we got a bandsaw blade with it, and it broke at the weld when I was using it. And when that happened, which this is a different issue, but when that happened, the teeth caught on the tire, and it just like made it not flat in a tiny place, and that caused the blade to like have a little vibration to it, which made it kind of, it didn't have drift, but it made like the kerf much wider because the blade was wiggling. So, and also when the blade broke, some of the internal, like some nut got loose, and the top wheel was out of square, and that just slightly, but just the blade breaking caused it to go out of square, and that caused issues. So I don't know. It could be any number of things. The tensioner thing is definitely a great tool. And if that is the issue, that's an easy fix. And if the tires messed up for some reason, like maybe the blade got twisted during one of the drift cuts, and it like worked its way into the tire and made it not flat. I'm not sure.
I think a lot of, and I missed this. I didn't read this, but he's been avoiding putting a new blade on because he only has more of this one particular blade. I think with any bandsaw issue, you cannot possibly really figure out what's going on with the current blade. Like if you've got an issue that just doesn't make any sense, just take that blade off, put a different blade on, and see if that problem continues. I'm willing to bet when he had that jump, I'm wondering if the blade hit the throat plate, or if the blade hit something and there is there's something wrong with the blade now. It's either super dull, which would cause drift from, if it hit the throat plate, or if it hits something, a bandsaw blade is not going to stay sharp hitting anything other than wood. So I think it's a dull blade, or a bent blade, like you said, Larissa, or something going on, but you got to change that blade. Otherwise you will never know. I know a guy I follow on Instagram who took his bandsaw apart, refusing, like took the spring, the tension mechanism apart and everything, refusing to believe that the problem was the blade, and then wound up having a hard time getting it back together and and it's like, no, you can't, you have to change the blade. Just like, let's go with the easiest, cheapest solution first. And like a $20 blade's that. So,
well, see, I missed that part in the message that said that he didn't want to change the blade because, like, again, like if you're absolutely right, Ben. If that blade touched any metal, and it could be any of the guarding, it could be any of the anything, you've taken set off of one side of the blade. Oh, I see it there now. Yeah.
I bought a couple of blades and am now hesitant to use them after this experience. So.
Always replace the blade first.
Yeah.
Always, 100%. Because unless you can see something like what Larissa was talking about, where there was like a noticeable spot on the wheel that had become damaged, I mean, that's, you know what I mean? That's a no-brainer. You see it right away. But like if you're having trouble, like I assume, and even if it's a brand new blade, all it takes is like a bad weld or a bad grind, or maybe something happened in that specific area of the coil that caused it to have more set on one side or the other. Like that's the first thing that goes, blade. Like, and you're right, Ben, they're $20. You just get rid of them and throw on another one and see if the problem persists. If it does, well then, yeah, you look deeper into it.
Well, take it off, fold it up, or attempt to fold it up and fail, and then put it somewhere. And if it turns out not to be the blade, then but you cannot really and if you are worried, and Jesse, you're right, maybe, like if you bought 4 blades at the same time, they might all be from the same batch or something like that. I don't know, but maybe go buy a different manufacturer blade for testing purposes. If you've got, 4 half-inch wood slicer blades, go buy a 1/4-inch Starrett or something like that and see if that totally changes things up for you. I don't know. But, the bandsaw blades need to be treated as disposable items. So
it's true.
They're like sandpaper.
I never change sandpaper when I should. Never.
Isn't it Mike who says like who encourages people to throw sandpaper away? I think I remember him saying something, because it's like if I have to put anything more than the weight of my hand down on my random orbital sander to sand in order to get results, then that piece of paper is dead and I toss it.
Yeah.
The answer is not lean on it.
Yeah.
Because then you're going to get more squiggle marks.
Yeah.
You're going to get, and you may end up going through 10 sheets of sandpaper, but really, what's a sheet of sandpaper worth? Like, what's a disc worth?
Yeah. I mean, it's one of those things that, like, I know. I just don't.
I don't like it.
It's just, I don't want to.
I don't want to.
But I am pretty vicious with my bandsaw blades, though. I've just tried to, like, the second you start thinking, is this blade, that's probably when you should
gone.
go. Yeah. But all right, well, I think that about covers it.
Nice.
Thank y'all.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah.
Well, that does it for this episode of Shop Talk Live. Thanks again to Vic and Larissa. It's always great having them on. I learned so much from them. I hope you do too. I guess that's what this podcast is all about, learning from some of the world's coolest woodworkers. Thanks for being a part of it as a listener and as Fine Woodworking members and subscribers. It's thank you. Thank you. Head on over to finewoodworking.com/e-learning to find out about all of the e-learning courses that we've got going on right now. A lot of cool stuff. If you're looking to get started in SketchUp, Dave Richards is the man. Taught me everything I know about SketchUp, and will teach you everything you need to know about SketchUp. All right. We'll be back in 2 weeks with another episode. Thanks for listening.
I wouldn't think you could dance like to electronica, like with your wool underwear and all that stuff that you're wearing.
It's itchy. You have to dance. That's how you scratch. Without being rude.
Without being rude. Yeah, exactly. There's nothing worse than sweating in wool underwear. It's the worst.
How do you think dancing started, Vic?